Well, listeners, I have just had the pleasure of watching a very, very intense thriller of a film that is about to be released. It is called Here Be Dragons, and we're actually lucky enough today on the show to be able to chat to the star of the film, Nathan Clark Sapsford. Welcome to the program, mate.
Thank you very much.
Now, this is an absolutely amazing film. I know a lot of people out there are going to watch this film and they're going to be emotionally involved with this film. Tell us a little bit about your own journey with this film. Where did it all start for you?
Uh, well, it actually, as far as films go, it all happened quite quickly, actually. I guess I got to meet the writer, director, producer Alistair Newton Brown, and through somebody here in Sydney, and we both were scheming about what we were going to do with separate things, and then one day it just our paths crossed with it, and I think he saw me in a play that I did in Sydney, and he'd been quietly thinking, "Oh yeah, I think maybe this is the guy for it," and once we sort of decided we were going to do this thing, it was on. So it was. I guess the first thing I needed to do was just try to get over to Belgrade, because we shot it all in Belgrade, Serbia, and sort of get a feel for the place and the people, which was sort of eluding me in my research. But yeah, it was all sort of 2019 into 2020, and go time in February 2020.
What was your thoughts when you first sat down and read the script? Because, like I said, this is a pretty intense film, and for your character, David, there is a lot that he's going through throughout this film. What was that like for you when you first sat down and read the script, and what made you want to make the film?
I think kind of for the reason you're talking about. I think for the challenge of it, for starters, it was like, wow, this is something there are a lot of things I don't know much about, just cursory information, stuff from growing up about the Balkan Wars, and and then also what it might be like to be an investigator. And yeah, I mean, look, I relish a challenge. So for me, it was, let's see if I can learn some of the language. Let's see if I can speak to people I know who know things about, detective work and law enforcement. So it was, I was like going to the Supreme Court and watching cases happen and seeing how complicated that was, and just to sort of try to familiarise myself as much as I could with what might have happened at the ICTY, and what these investigators would be trying to do, and the obstacles that they face, and thematically, like how they, it's a professional work, but it's, it has to, I'm sure it's emotional in a lot of ways, and quiet work, and they spend so much of this process alone and can't share it with their partners necessarily. So I was really attracted to all of that.
I was going to ask that, with your research, did you actually have access to a war crimes investigator, or were you able to talk to soldiers? Like, what kind of in-depth research were you actually able to do?
Well, I mean, it's funny. It's pretty interesting, because in Australia, I didn't know about any of this, and I'm still learning about it now after we've shot it. But Australia had really a disproportionately big amount of people that were involved in that tribunal, and part of that is because they had actually tried under local law people for war crimes. So some cases had happened, so they were like in a unique position in the world, and were attractive to the people who are setting up the teams at these tribunals. So, I mean, personally, so Alistair, he had a contact who was in charge at the ICTY, so he had learned a lot of that, and he's very thorough in the way he works, and he also had his old best friend Mark Winden, our amazing DP, lived in Serbia at the time and had been in Eastern Europe for a while, for many years actually. So he had sort of had an in on multiple fronts. I personally, that there are interviews I've listened to many. There's this Australian, I've forgotten his name right now, but he was a detective in New South Wales Police in the country. He was a country cop, and he became one of the lead investigators. So, and the stuff that he would say about it, so matter of fact and so dry and so interesting, hearing all of this with an Australian accent. So, I mean, that was the basis of some of it. I've got a dear friend of mine who used to be a detective in Victorian Police with major crimes, so he was useful to me. And so you just sort of piece together information and then and then I think being over there and meeting the locals who had lived through that time, and anybody who was my age or older was either and a male either reluctantly fought in one of those wars in various places, or had sort of run from the authorities. So it was sort of it's recent history, and it's still raw.
From an acting point of view as well, approaching the character of David, how did you approach playing a character who, from the very start of this film, is damaged? I mean, a lot of times you'll go into an acting role and the character is quite healthy at the start and then goes downhill. How did you go into this film playing a character that was already damaged?
Well, I don't know. It's just sort of about the circumstances. I think it's just sort of about. You shoot things. You rarely shoot anything. What's the word I'm looking for? In running order. You know what I mean? So, even if you were shooting something where, you're in a good shape at the beginning and then bad shape at the end, you might have to shoot the bad shape stuff first anyway. So, I think I didn't necessarily approach it like that. I just had my circumstances, and it's sort of quite clear that this man lost the love of his life and felt that he could have done something about it, and certainly had retribution earlier. And a lot of those unanswered questions for him, and what the life he's dedicated himself to, which I was in awe of. It's a pretty selfless act. So I don't know. The more you get involved in those circumstances, the easier it gets.
Now, what was it like for you traveling over to Belgrade as well and filming in Belgrade? How did you find that experience?
Well, it's amazing people, and I've got some now dear friends that are in Croatia too, who are actors, and really they all share a bond and a love for the arts. It's really deep, and a real understanding of classic works, and so from that perspective, it was eye-opening, and it was a great collaboration. I love it. It's one of my favourite things to do is to the privilege of getting to shoot on location and go to a place maybe really far from you, and your cultural upbringing, and trying to sort of learn about it and sort of find your way maybe from the outside to the inside when you start sort of getting some of the jokes and getting some of their sense of humour, and then it really becomes really fun, because then when you get some of those things, they really embrace you as a local. And meanwhile, we shot in Belgrade, shooting Belgrade for Belgrade.
Yep.
And a lot of films get shot over there, bigger budget, often big sort of action films, where they just use Serbia as a backdrop for sort of nondescript Eastern Europe, like the Badlands of Eastern Europe or something. And so for us to actually shoot Belgrade for Belgrade was something that made them be pretty interested in it, because they're sort of because it never happens.
Yeah.
As a Western film.
Now, I wanted to ask as well about the director, Alistair Newton-Brown. It's very rare that we get to see here in Australia a first-time feature director get to go overseas and make a film like this that's especially been receiving the the accolades that the film has been receiving. What was it like working with Alistair, and what's he like to work with as a director?
Oh, he's great. He's great. I mean, we've really formed a brotherhood, you know, and we went through an awful lot on this shoot. COVID happened. We had to scurry out of there. We had to get back during the height of COVID to finish shooting, and there were a lot of setbacks with all that, with all of that. And like, you know, creatively, we don't. Like, we're very respectful of each other and also challenge each other. I mean, which is really the perfect combination for me in that sort of professional relationship. So, yeah, I mean, we were isolating together on the way, you know, back from Belgrade the first time. So we've sort of really feel like we've been through something together and really proud of what we did. I mean, when we wrapped at the end of it all, and we had to scurry back again because of another governmental lockdown in Belgrade, and they were shutting the airports again and last flights out and all that sort of thing. We were quickly copying these hard drives full of all the film, you know, so everybody sort of had one in case we lost one somewhere, you know. And Mark kept one in Belgrade, Alistair had one, I had a backup with me, and we were on separate flights. So it was sort of, I don't know, like cradling the baby on the way back. It was pretty exciting.
Well, Nathan, I know we are running out of time, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time on our show today. This is an absolutely amazing film that we hope a lot of our listeners will go out and watch. And I guess to finish off, what would you like to say to people out there who are about to sit down and watch Here Be Dragons for the first time?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, you know, we're so excited to have it coming out and being so widely available, people can rent, and that it's going to be alongside these, you know, such great films that are out. You know, it's been such a good year for filmmaking. So, I don't know. Just sit with an open mind. The film's, the idea of the film, I think, is to sort of pose more questions than it answers, and especially we shot this before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, before the Hamas invasion of Israel, and then the corresponding conflicts, which are so devastating and awful in the world. And I think this film serves to question the futility of war, to question our place in this world, and whether, you know, revenge is really anything that can serve anybody, and whether the past misdeeds of somebody can never be redeemed, as awful as horrific as actions can be when somebody does good. So I don't know. I think it's something that hopefully just gets people thinking about it, and that's the response we've had. And we tried to make a film that's sensitive in that way, and I think it's ambitious, and it's a real credit to Alistair as a really ambitious project to be wading into you know, moral waters and societal thinking. So yeah, long-winded answer, but, you know, hopefully, as well as all of that, it's just like it's a thriller that you can sit and watch and takes you on a journey, and hopefully provides plenty of suspense, and there's a really satisfying film experience on that front too.